Let's talk about the difference between the word hazard and the word risk. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Pre-Accident Podcast. I am your loving host for this safety moment. My name is Todrick von Conklenstein. So if you've hung out with me, and you probably have, and I'm sure you have, you know that I talk a lot about the fact that we use the word hazard and risk interchangeably. Crap, if you look it up in the dictionary, they're used interchangeably. What's weird is they're not interchangeable. A hazard is something that can hurt you. A risk is the distance you have away from it. But what's interesting is I think the reason these are confused is because we don't really have a good definition of risk. If you've read Mary Douglas, and I don't know if you've read Mary Douglas or not, but she's someone you ought to put on your reading list. She's an anthropologist that thinks about the notion of risk. She thinks about social risk just like we talk about social sense making. What Mary Douglas says is that a traditional understanding of risk is really kind of a Western economic model. Probability times severity equals risk. And if you're an actuary, if you're sitting in a room right now selling insurance or in charge of a captive or something, that's probably a really good way to understand and to really quantify risk as best we possibly can. The problem with risk is that it's very, very fluid and that it almost entirely exists in the eye of the operator. The company doesn't manage risk. The company manages hazard. So if I have a bunch of sharp stuff in my plant floor, that's not a risk, that's a hazard. The people who will actually manage the risk are the people who move that sharp stuff. So I started thinking about it, and I think our challenge is the way we define risk is probably archaic. It's old. It's very traditional. It's linear, and it's actually an economic model. I'm going to actually offer you in this podcast a new definition of risk, and it's really easy. Risk is the degree to which an operator faces uncertain outcomes. Let me say it again. Risk is the degree to which an operator faces uncertain outcomes. Now, with that definition of risk in the bag, all of a sudden risk becomes much more interesting to think about from a management, from a leadership, and from a safety side. Because what you really control is the hazard. What you control is the certainty of the hazard. To do that, I think we have to first redefine how we think about risk. That's the safety moment for today. Short, sweet, and concise. Learn something new every single day. Bet you did today. Have as much fun as you possibly can. And for goodness sakes, be safe.